Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Diablo 3 Build Factory. My name is Phobos and today's topic will be a answer episode to one of you guys. So, one of you guys asked me if Entangling Shot is viable for Inferno or not. And up until a few days ago I didn't even know for myself. I didn't try this skill that much for Inferno. And I really think that most people don't, because the skill is really underused and most people use hungering arrows and bowler shots. But I decided, okay, let's put the skill to the test and let's try the skill on Inferno mode Act 4, and if it's viable there, it will be viable for the other acts as well, at least in my opinion. So without further ado, let's put the skill to the test and I will show you 3 runes of this skill. Let's get to it. First off, some basic information about Entangling Shot. Entangling Shot is a really fast moving attack spell which generates hatred, and that's awesome. That's really important if you try to stutter step, for instance. And it slows targets whether you chain them together or not, and that's really important to keep in mind because you're not dependent on other enemies to slow them down. So let's talk about the runes first, and then let's get to the final verdict if the skill is viable for Inferno or not. The first rune that was asked for is called Bounty Hunter, and that's basically your life leech rune, just like with nether tentacles for elemental arrows, for instance. It returns 6% of the damage dealt back as life, which is quite nice if you want to fight against reflect damage enemies. So if you struggle a lot against reflect damage enemies and also struggle a lot with keeping the distance between you and the enemies, I would recommend trying this rune, because it does what you expect of it. No more, no less, but what it does is really good. So if you struggle with reflect damage, try this rune, it is really nice. On the other hand, I wouldn't recommend using this rune if you want to tank a lot of damage, because the damage output is a little lower than with bowler shots and hungering arrows, of course. And the thing is, if you don't have life on hit items, for instance, or life leech items, this rune is quite a decent choice. But in case you have these items already, I wouldn't recommend it. Therefore, I would recommend choosing something else. But like I already said, it is a basic addition if you struggle with enemies which have reflect damage. So if that's your basic concern at the moment, try out this rune. The other rune that was asked for is called Chain Gang, and this rune basically chains up to 4 enemies with each other, so they basically slow each other down one after another. So actually it wasn't as good as I expected it to be. I tried it out a few times and for quite some time also, and one might think you'll be able to kite all day with this rune, but actually there are far better choices than this one. So I would say you can try it, but basically you shouldn't get your expectations too far up, because you're only chaining up 4 enemies at a time and they are only slowed for 2 seconds, and that isn't that long, especially on Inferno difficulty. So like I already said, I tried this rune for quite some time and it is nice, but it isn't anything special in my opinion. You should pay more attention to the next rune I will show to you guys, and don't get your expectations too high for Chain Gang. Now the rune I want you to pay attention to is called Heavy Burden, and I was really pleasantly surprised by this rune. I didn't expect it to be that good on Inferno mode. I was really surprised, because like I already said, the skill is really underused. Most people use hungering arrows and bowler shots, but if you're struggling to keep enemies at bay, this rune might be just for you, because what this rune basically does is it increases the slow duration to 4 seconds, and that's a lot, especially on Inferno difficulty. So if you manage to shoot as many different enemies as possible, you'll be able to kite everything really effectively. And that's due to the fact that you don't have to chain every enemy together. It is enough to shoot them once, and then they will be slowed for 4 seconds. And 4 seconds is enough to shoot each enemy once. You have to have a good sense of aiming and character control, but that's nothing you can't practice, or nothing that can't be achieved by practicing really hard. So I would say that if you struggle a lot with keeping enemies at bay, and even if you use smokescreen and tactical advantage or caltrops for instance, I would recommend trying this rune, because basically you don't have any other choices left if you think about it. But of course, as always, there's a hook, and this time it is that you are sacrificing some of your damage to gaining a little bit more survivability. And it's just like I mentioned in some of my other videos, you have to find the balance between damage and survivability. And if you are struggling a lot with survivability at the moment, you will have to sacrifice some of your damage to gain this survivability. And like I already mentioned, if you are struggling with keeping enemies at bay even with tactical advantage and caltrops, this is an option. And also, if you don't use caltrops, this skill is also really nice, especially if you combine it with something like Call the Weak. And it's a decision you have to make for yourself, but it is an option that is viable for Inferno. And that's all I got for you today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I really have to say, some skills are really underrated and really overlooked sometimes. And as you can see, the skill even works against Diablo himself, the Lord of Terror. So that's something I didn't expect to begin with as well. So you should give the skill a try, at least in my opinion. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to press the like button, it's really much appreciated. And if you want to stay up to date for more action of the Diablo 3 Build Factory, make sure to subscribe. But as always, I wish you a really nice day, have a good one, and I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.